My 28F boyfriend, 30M, secretly used my inheritance to buy a boat, then said I owed him for letting me live rent-free in his house, which is actually my grandma's old house. I don't even know where to start with this because I still feel like I'm in shock. I, 28F, have been with my boyfriend Adam, 30M, for almost 4 years. We met through mutual friends, hit it off fast, and moved in together after just 8 months. We didn't have much at the time, but things were simple. We split groceries, I helped with bills when I could, and we figured stuff out together. The place we lived in back then was a tiny 2-bedroom rental in a sketchy part of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. My grandmother passed away about 1.5 years ago, and she left me her house. It's not a mansion or anything, but it's a sweet little place in the suburbs, mortgage-free, with a big backyard and a garden she loved. It needed a bit of TLC, but it was fully livable. I grew up spending weekends there, and it holds so many memories. She left it to me in her will, specifically naming me as the sole beneficiary. No catches. Just hers to mine. When I told Adam about the house, he was super excited at first. He called it a blessing and said it would help us finally get ahead. I offered to let him move in with me since we were still paying rent at the old place, and he seemed grateful. But from the very beginning, he started acting like it was his house. He changed the Wi-Fi password without telling me, started calling it our place, and told his friends we bought a home together. I let it slide, thinking maybe he just felt proud of us for leveling up in life. But the financial stuff started getting weird. He insisted we open a joint account, saying it would be simpler now that we were sharing a house. I didn't like the idea at first, but I agreed under the condition that we'd only use it for shared expenses, groceries, repairs, utilities, that kind of thing. I kept my personal savings separate, especially the inheritance money my grandmother had also left me. It was around $75,000 after taxes. I told him I was keeping it for emergencies, future renovations, and possibly starting a small business someday. He said he understood. Or so I thought. A few months after we moved in, I noticed that Adam started acting strange whenever I brought up my inheritance. If I mentioned using a small portion to replace the old windows or fix the roof, he'd say things like, "You don't need to dip into that. I got us," or "Why spend your future savings when we can just do it later?" It sounded supportive on the surface, but it also meant that nothing got done. Meanwhile, he started buying new tech stuff, gaming equipment, smart home gadgets, expensive tools, for the house. I asked where the money was coming from, and he brushed it off with, "Work bonuses," or "I've been saving up too." Then the boat appeared. I came home one Friday afternoon to find a freaking boat parked in the driveway. A shiny white fishing boat with a trailer, an outboard motor, and fancy decals. I thought maybe it was a friend's or he'd rented it for a weekend trip. But no. Adam walked out, grinning like a kid at Christmas, and said, "Surprise. We've got a boat now." I laughed at first because it was so absurd. "We? What do you mean we? You bought this?" He nodded. "Yup. Isn't she beautiful? I figured we could take weekend trips. Lake house vibes. Maybe even rent it out and make some side cash." I asked him how he bought it, and that's when he said it. Casually. Like it was nothing. "Oh, I just used some of the savings. From the joint account." My stomach dropped. I ran inside, logged into our bank account, and sure enough, $34,000 gone. Transferred out to a dealership the day before. I checked my personal savings, and to my absolute horror, I saw 2 separate transfers, one for $20,000 and another for $15,000, both authorized under a name I didn't recognize. When I asked him about those, his face went pale. That was just for closing costs and taxes," he stammered. "And the rest was to, fix up the backyard. You said you wanted a patio." "A patio?" I was livid. I demanded answers, and after a full-blown screaming match, he finally admitted that he had used my inheritance to buy the boat. Not the joint account, my personal account, the one I told him was off-limits. When I asked how he even got access, he shrugged and said, "You left your laptop open. You never log out." It wasn't hard. I was stunned. "That's theft, Adam. You stole from me." He scoffed. "Stole? Don't be dramatic. You live rent-free in a house I maintain. I pay the bills. I take care of everything. I've earned that money back tenfold. I swear I blacked out from rage. Rent-free? I own the house. It's my name on the deed. He's not paying rent because I haven't asked him to. I've been covering groceries and utilities half the time too." I reminded him that the house was my grandmother's and that it was legally mine. That's when his tone changed. He crossed his arms and said, "Yeah, but I live here. So I have rights too. And honestly, you kind of owe me for putting up with your moods and your family crap all year." That was the moment something broke in me. I realized he didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a resource. Someone to leech from. And when I pushed back, he acted like I was the problem. I told him I wanted him out. That night. He refused. I called my older brother and asked him to come over. Adam tried to play it cool when my brother showed up, saying things like, "We're just having a little disagreement." But when my brother stood in the doorway with his arms folded, Adam got the message. He packed a few bags, made a big dramatic show of how ungrateful I was, and finally left. But it wasn't over. 2 days later, I got a call from my bank's fraud department. They flagged suspicious activity on my account. Apparently, Adam had tried to access it again from another device. They froze everything and asked me to come in. That's when I found out he'd not only transferred money from my inheritance without permission, but he had also added himself as an authorized user to my account weeks ago. I had no idea. He must have done it by answering my security questions. He knew all my answers. Childhood pets. Favorite teacher. The works. I filed a police report. I didn't want to, but everyone I talked to said I had to protect myself. The officer I spoke with said it clearly counted as financial abuse and fraud. I gave them all the information, bank records, screenshots, even a photo of the boat sitting in the driveway. Adam started texting me non-stop. First apologizing. Then blaming me. Then threatening to take back what's his. He even said he'd tell people I was emotionally unstable if I didn't back off. My hands were shaking. I didn't reply. Then he showed up at my house again. I was in the kitchen when I heard the knock. It was firm, insistent, and immediately made my stomach twist. I peeked through the window and saw Adam on the porch, pacing with his phone in his hand. I didn't open the door. I didn't even move. I just stood there, frozen, watching him knock again, this time louder. He started shouting through the door, "We need to talk. You can't just kick me out like that. This is our house." I called the police. I wasn't going to let him bully me into opening the door. When I told the dispatcher he had already stolen money from me and had tried to access my bank again, they sent someone out right away. Adam stayed on the porch for a few more minutes, yelling things like, "You'll regret this," and "I gave you the best years of my life," before the cops pulled up. He tried to smooth talk them, of course. Said it was just a misunderstanding, that I was his girlfriend and he had every right to see her. But I had already filed the police report, and I had a restraining order pending. The officers asked him to leave and told him if he came back, he could be arrested. He glared at me through the window before finally walking off down the street. I watched until he disappeared. Then I sat down on the kitchen floor and cried until I couldn't feel my face. That night, I changed all my passwords. I froze my credit. I called the dealership and told them the boat was bought with stolen money. They said it was already registered under Adam's name, and unless I had a court ruling, they couldn't repossess it. So now I had to go through the legal process of trying to get the funds back. It felt like climbing a mountain in the dark. But the worst part wasn't even the money. It was the betrayal. I had trusted him. Lived with him. Shared my life and home with him. And all the while, he was keeping score like I was a tenant he was generously allowing to stay in my grandmother's house. I went quiet on social media. I stopped answering texts from mutual friends. I didn't want to explain what happened. I felt ashamed. Like I should have seen it coming. But I also started therapy, because I realized this wasn't just about Adam. This was about how I'd been taught to always keep the peace, to avoid confrontation, to be understanding even when someone was trampling all over me. A week later, I got a call from one of our mutual friends, his name's Mark. He sounded weirdly nervous and told me Adam was telling everyone that I'd stolen his money to buy a house for myself, and that I was kicking him out over a boat like a psycho. I almost laughed. His money? The man hadn't even bought a vacuum since we moved in. Mark said people were starting to ask questions because the story didn't make sense. Adam had been vague, but he was clearly trying to paint himself as the victim. I asked Mark if he believed him, and he immediately said no, that's why he called. He said Adam was always a little too proud of what he hadn't earned, and this just confirmed it. Turns out Adam had gone on some Facebook rant about users and gold diggers, and even tagged me in one of the comments. He deleted it later, but not before a few people screenshotted it. It was embarrassing, infuriating, and pathetic all at once. I blocked him on everything. Changed my number. Went full ghost. The legal stuff moved slowly. I had to go through a lot of hoops, but with the police report, bank records, and written proof from the dealership, my lawyer was confident we had a case. I wasn't expecting to see the full $34,000 again, but I was determined to fight for it anyway. In the meantime, I finally started working on the house the way I wanted to. I painted the walls. Tore up the old carpet. Planted flowers in my grandma's garden bed again. Every nail I hammered into the wall felt like reclaiming a part of myself. And then something unexpected happened. I found the notebook. It was buried in a box in the attic, full of my grandmother's things I hadn't touched yet. I was looking for an old picture frame and stumbled across a dusty, spiral-bound notebook with her handwriting on the cover. Inside were letters she had written to me. Some of them were dated years ago. Others were from just months before she passed. She wrote about the house. About how she hoped it would be a place I'd feel safe in. A place to grow. She wrote about love, too. About how it should never come with strings or make you feel small. One line stood out so much I copied it onto a sticky note and put it on my fridge. If someone makes you feel like you owe them for loving you, it's not love, it's control. That line made me cry harder than anything else. I decided that no matter what happened with the court case, I would never let someone like Adam back into my life. Not just him, anyone like him. The kind of person who takes and takes, then calls it generosity. Who steals from you and says it's your fault. I started talking to friends again, slowly. I told a few close ones the truth, and to my surprise, they were incredibly supportive. One of my coworkers even said, "You're stronger than most people I know. You stood up for yourself when it mattered." That hit me hard. Because for a long time, I didn't feel strong. I felt stupid and used. But maybe strength isn't about avoiding mistakes. Maybe it's about facing them head-on and refusing to let them define you. Then came the court summons. Adam was officially being charged with financial fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized access to a personal account. It was surreal seeing his name on the paperwork. His lawyer tried to argue that we had shared finances, and that I had given him implied permission to use the money. But I had everything in writing. Messages where I told him that account was mine. Proof that he added himself without my knowledge. Testimony from my bank and even from the dealership. He didn't show up to the first court date. His lawyer did, though, and asked for a continuance. But the judge wasn't playing games. She looked over the evidence, raised an eyebrow, and said, "This case is already leaning in favor of the plaintiff." That felt like the first breath I'd taken in months. In the meantime, I filed paperwork to officially remove him from anything tied to my house. Not that he ever had legal standing, but just in case. I changed the locks. Installed cameras. I wasn't living in fear anymore. I was just being cautious. Smart. And then, out of nowhere, he tried to reach out again. Through a handwritten letter, dropped off in my mailbox. No return address, just a 2-page, scribbled mess. He said he was sorry, that he missed me, that he didn't know what came over him. He said he'd been going through a lot. I didn't reply. I gave the letter to my lawyer instead. The trial date came faster than I expected. Even though it had been months of legal back and forth, when I stood in front of the courtroom, I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. My palms were sweating, and I could barely hear the judge over the thudding in my ears. But I remembered why I was doing this. It wasn't just for the money. It was for closure. For my grandma. For the version of myself I had almost lost trying to make a toxic man feel comfortable in my home. Adam finally showed up, clean-shaven, wearing a suit that looked borrowed, with his hair slicked back like he was auditioning for a role. He avoided eye contact with me the whole time. His lawyer pushed the narrative of a misunderstood financial agreement between cohabitants, but my side had receipts, literally. Every transfer, every unauthorized access, every text he sent bragging about the boat, and even his Facebook rant that a mutual friend had printed and emailed to my lawyer, I testified. I told the court how he had slowly undermined my autonomy, manipulated me into thinking I was freeloading in my own home, and stole my inheritance while claiming I owed him. My voice shook at first, but as I kept talking, it steadied. The judge was calm but stern, asking Adam's lawyer pointed questions about the timeline and the nature of our financial arrangement. They had nothing. It was clear the moment my lawyer handed over the notarized documents from my grandmother's will and the final banking records. When the verdict came, the judge ruled in my favor. Adam was ordered to pay back the full $34,000, plus court fees. He was also fined for unauthorized bank access and placed under a no-contact order. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, breathing quietly, feeling like I had taken back something that had been stolen from me long before the money ever disappeared. He didn't look at me once on the way out of the courtroom. That night, I sat on the front steps of my house with a cup of tea and watched the sun go down over the garden I'd brought back to life. My grandma would have been proud. I finally understood what she meant in that letter. Love isn't about sacrifice that leaves you hollow. It's about feeling safe, empowered, free. Update 2. Hey Redditors, it's the final update. It's been almost 6 months since the court case ended, and I wanted to come back and close the loop on everything. Life has changed more than I ever imagined. I've made peace with what happened, but more importantly, I've made peace with myself. Adam tried to appeal the judgment once but was quickly shut down due to the overwhelming evidence against him. I've seen nothing of the money yet. He's claiming financial hardship, but my lawyer is working with collections to garnish any future wages or assets. As far as I know, he sold the boat for a fraction of what he paid, probably to cover some of his legal fees. The poetic justice of that isn't lost on me. I renovated the guest room into an office and finally launched the small design consultancy I've been dreaming about for years. I landed my first few clients through word of mouth, and it's been growing slowly but steadily. I finally feel like I'm building something of my own. No strings, no guilt, no man-child trying to gaslight me out of what's mine. Therapy has helped a lot. I've come to understand how easily someone can distort reality when you care about them. But I've also learned how to trust myself again. My instincts. My worth. I no longer let people hang around just because they say they love me. I look at how they show up. How they support. How they speak when things get hard. I still live in my grandma's house. It's become something new now, no longer a place I associate with what happened, but a space I've poured love and energy into. I wake up feeling safe here. That's something I don't take for granted anymore. If anyone reading this is in a similar situation, if you're starting to feel like you owe someone for the bare minimum, if they're using your past or your resources against you, please get out. You don't owe them your dignity. You don't owe them your silence. Thanks to everyone who supported me when I posted the first part of this. I read every comment, even the hard-to-hear ones, and they helped me wake up and reclaim my life. I'll never forget that. What do you think? Tell us in the comments. Like the video and hit the subscribe button for more Reddit stories.